Welcome to the Dynasty Academy. Michael Washington. Mark is being a pompous ass before we came on air, and Mark Ongst.
Well, I mean, you are. I'm not. I mean, you are.
Eli Manuel.
Why would you draft a wide receiver, too?
Eli, you can cut this out.
You can leave it in, too.
Restart.
Kyler Murray has a fantastic arm. It's just the decision-making for him, for me. Michael Vick just made better decisions, I feel like, overall.
Makes sense. I said 1 or 2 inches, growing 1 or 2 inches, and you're like...
And he's still going,
I have leagues on too many apps. I don't know what to follow.
Dynasty Academy here. Michael Washington with Mark Ongst, as always, here on the Shady Sports Network. We are here for part 2 of the free agent frenzy. Last week we talked about the running backs. Tonight we're going to talk about the lackluster quarterback and wide receiver pool we were just talking a little bit before we came on air, and maybe some tight ends if we feel they're important enough. But very, very lackluster free agency for those 3 positions, really. I mean, let's be honest, it was.
Are quarterbacks and tight ends really ever that great a free agency?
No, but I mean, there's some intriguing options this year, at least. I mean,
but like when you think about quarterbacks, when teams like them, they re-sign them. So
yeah,
it's very rare you see many of them move around. So you're never really going to see that big name, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, we could start off with the big one, obviously. You know, Mac Jones being traded to Jacksonville to push. I mean, no, sorry, just kidding. Obviously, that was not a big one. You're shaking your head like that.
Six round pick. I mean, that's valuable.
Oh my God, Jesus, 6th round pick. Oh man, whatever. Mac Jones never got a fair shake in New England. I'm sorry, I can't blame it all on him. I can't. Do I think he's some kind of superstar quarterback? No, but I can't blame it all on him. He didn't get a fair shake. He had 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years. In his sophomore year, he had a former defensive, I don't even know what to call him. Anyways, a defensive coordinator who turned into a defensive coordinator, yeah. Who was a head coach, who failed miserably as a head coach, calling the plays for him on offense. Like it was a nightmare. Bill Belichick did not do Mac any good in New England. I cannot fully blame him for everything, but at the same time, I understand the move because you need a hard reset there in New England. So there you go. That's what happened.
Can you name me a quarterback other than Trevor Lawrence over the last few years who actually has gotten a fair shot?
That has gotten a fair shot.
CJ Stroud would be
Joe
one.
Burrow.
He's before Trevor.
I mean, well, but I'm just saying. I mean, you know,
Trevor since Trevor's class.
Since Trevor's class? Oh man, no. Because I mean, if you think about most of the quarterbacks that were in this situation, most of the quarterbacks that were drafted in that situation were drafted to unstable organizations and never given a fair shake.
No?
I mean, Justin Fields went through a lot of the same thing in Chicago, but.
That's what I'm saying. So
no, I know, but I'm just, but look at the difference that a coaching staff and a staff that believes in their quarterback makes. If you look at Alex Smith and you look at Baker Mayfield's situations, once they found a place, look what happened, right? Like that was the biggest thing for them that they needed. You know, Alex Smith had 6 different offensive coordinators in his first 7 years in the league, and then he landed in Kansas City, which had a coaching staff believe in him, and he put together a good stretch for himself. It was just he was older at that point, right?
Well, I mean,
you know,
he was limited. So they knew what they had, they knew what they were getting. For a few years they were going to have him. They drafted a plan. They did not force that plan. They sat. They waited. Right. I was just talking about that with somebody the other day. You watch these quarterbacks who get at least a year to sit and learn the game seem to have so much more success than these quarterbacks we just throw out there.
Well, yes and no. Again, I think it depends on the situation that they're walking into.
Sure, but like look look at how things have been. Josh Allen worked out by being thrown into the fire, and that was only because it was a organization that did everything possible to help Josh Allen because year one Josh Allen was not a good quarterback. He
Right.
was a good athlete. He was a terrible quarterback.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Ah, this is the guy we knew was coming from Wyoming. He's not going to be good. Look at how he's doing." They believed in him. They did everything they could to make him better, to help him, to get him corrected. But look at the rest of his draft class. Sam Darnold. The Jets did nothing to help him.
Unstable organization. Did nothing.
Correct.
Coaching staff, carousel.
Let's not act like the Bills were some stable organization, though.
But they were as soon as they got the right coach in place, and that's all that mattered.
Sure, right.
But got GM and Brandon Beane who believed in Josh Allen, and that's all that mattered. What is happening is a lot of these organizations are drafting guys. Like you take a look at Baker. Baker has had how many different head coaches, how many different offensive coordinators?
Another one.
People forget Baker Mayfield has not been in the league for that long.
But let's also Trey Lance went to an organization that had their coach and had everything in place, and yet he never injuries hurt him.
Injuries.
And Brock Purdy played well, but you can't tell me he got an actual chance.
He did though. It was just he got hurt.
Right, but then you trade him off to a team that's not going to like. To me, that's not giving the guy a chance. If you traded all that stuff, and
the issue is with the Trey Lance argument though was they didn't really have a choice because Brock Purdy was the quarterback and playing really well. That obviously was a better team than they had with Jimmy Garoppolo, which, I mean, that's a different story. But with Jimmy Garoppolo, that led them to an NFC Championship game. He got hurt, so you didn't see what he could do in that NFC Championship game. He could have led them to a Super Bowl for all you know, as a rookie. They were handcuffed in that situation. They didn't have much of a choice because he got the chance. He started the 4 games, and he got hurt again. Like, if he hadn't got hurt...
No, that was
or whatever. It was second game. The second game of the year.
He never made it to the season after Purdy's first season. Lance got traded.
Not after Purdy.
Yeah, but
Purdy's rookie year, he started that season.
But they didn't even give them an option, a chance to battle it out in camp.
Because it was a 4th-year quarterback with a 5th-year option that you needed on a quarterback and an extension coming up.
I don't think he was that far in at that point.
Yeah.
No, he was drafted the same time as Fields. He's in the same draft as Fields.
Yeah, so
Fields is just coming up now. So
it's just coming up now. So it's just coming up now. So that was before the season.
Last year. So you didn't you gave him 2 seasons.
Because the 5th-year option is coming up. They had to make they make a decision.
2 years from now. 2 years from then. At that moment.
It's coming up this year. They have to make a decision this year.
They traded Fields or they traded Lance
before last season.
Last season. That's 2 seasons before you have to decide.
1 season.
No. Fields
just this past season, Mark. Just this past season.
Fields' decision will come after this season.
No,
that's when you decide
before this season. They have to figure it out in May of this year if they're going to pick up his option or not. They have to figure it out this year.
Okay, so that's still you had a whole season. Like you didn't even give them a chance to compete with each other.
Not this year. They didn't because they felt like they didn't have a choice. They had to roll with Purdy.
The reason they didn't think they had a choice because I think they thought, well, we won't get anything for them if we choose Purdy over him.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that it's a little bit different of a situation than some of these other ones because he's had 2 seasons prior to where he got hurt or 3 seasons where he got hurt.
It's why I would have, if I'm the Bears, I would have preferred to keep Justin Fields, draft Caleb Williams, let Caleb sit and see if Fields can do something so you can trade him for something better than a
conditional 6th.
That you're never going to get a 4th-round pick for because you're not going to play the guy.
I mean, so there is some grumblings. There are some grumblings out there that there is a possibility that if Russ does not perform in training camp, that he could technically get cut and they become Justin Fields because he's on the vet minimum because he's getting paid by Denver. So he's getting his money regardless, no matter what. So there is some grumblings that if Fields outperforms Russ, there is a chance Russ could get cut and try to latch on somewhere else, and that will become Fields' future. The idea, from what I'm understanding, from what I'm reading, and again, this is just obviously all of it's speculation unless you're in the Pittsburgh organization, is that they want Fields to be the guy for the future, but he needs to prove it first. They need to prove it first. And proving it means declining his fifth-year option in May, but still entering negotiations as long as he looks like the guy that they all hope that they got with him as a sixth-round pick or whatever, or in June or whenever they have to decide the fifth-year option. So, I mean, that's a different story. I just, when it comes to the quarterback side of things, I feel like the NFL doesn't know what they're doing. Like, I sent that meme to you, or that screenshot to you in the chat about the quarterback position. I believe I did, about how the NFL has a problem. Bucky Brooks tweeted out, and he's absolutely correct. They have a problem with the way that the quarterback position is structured, because they are not helping these guys develop, because they don't know what they're looking for. They're not playing into strengths. They're not trying to find a way to improve strengths. All they want to do is enhance the strengths. That's it. They don't care about the weaknesses. They ignore them, and you're never going to get a full quarterback, because the weaknesses are always going to be more glaring than what they're really strong at. Always.
And it's you have to fit into my offense.
Yeah,
not
awful.
Let me build an offense around you.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. So, anyways, we got a little bit off sidetrack there, but I mean, it's kind of relevant to what's happening. So, the big one obviously is Kirk Cousins signing in Atlanta. Now, Kurt has one playoff win. In real football, this doesn't seem like it's a really good signing, but for fantasy, this seems like a really good frigging signing. And it primarily starts because Kurt has always hovered around the top 10 as a quarterback, as a QB, and it helps enhance the wide receiver production as well. Is there any reservations with this move, though, because Kurt is coming off an Achilles injury and he's older?
Not that much. Mainly because he's not a guy that relied on his legs. He can move, but it's not like he's gonna be this speedster. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Justin Fields. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. This is the first time that I can remember a quarterback coming off of an Achilles, and we're gonna have two of them.
Yep.
So. This is really our guinea pig situation. So maybe it's terrible. We don't know. But in seeing how Achilles injuries are healing, and knowing that it's a guy that doesn't need to cut like a lot like running backs do, I feel like they're in a better situation. I have to believe, maybe Atlanta felt desperate, but seeing what Justin Fields went for in a trade, they couldn't have been that desperate. So I think they clearly see some kind of medical record that tells them they're not worried about it. Whether it's something to do with Aaron Rodgers and how he was, gearing up somewhat, out there at least throwing the ball on the field with teammates before the end of last season, that made them. But I don't worry about Cousins. Whether he starts the year, that'll be one thing. But I think they get rid of. Did they get rid of Desmond?
Yeah, they traded him to Arizona.
Yeah, so they clearly don't, I think, worry about it there. So I'm not worried about it.
I mean, from a fantasy production value, I mean, obviously he doesn't have Justin Jefferson anymore, because make no mistakes about it, Drake London and Kyle Pitts are not T.J. Hawkinson or Justin Jefferson. He does get Bijan though. Dalvin Cook was a primary guy at one point in time, and in Minnesota. So he does get Bijan, and one of Kirk Cousins' strengths is obviously, the pass, the play action. I'm worried about this offensive line, though. This is my biggest concern with this offensive line, is because I don't think it's as good as people think it is.
What were they graded as last year? Do you know?
To be honest with you, off the top of my head, I don't know that. But I feel like every time I was watching an Atlanta Falcons game, whether it was Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder, that they were running around for their life for the most part. And I don't know if that was just by design because it was Arthur Smith, but I don't know. Maybe Raheem Morris has better faith in it, and maybe the scheme will be better for him. It's just there's nothing that sticks out to me with this Atlanta offensive line that makes me go, this is going to be a Kirk Cousins that, I wouldn't be comfortable with him as my QB1. Let's put it that way. As previous years, I would be.
Okay, so you would have been.
Previous years, for sure. I mean, he's always hovered around that 10-12 range, and I'm not saying that he's not going to reach that again. It's just I don't know if I trust it as much. Because I feel like it's a downgrade at the wide receiver position, which is huge for a guy like Cousins. And the tight end position.
Even his days in Washington, he didn't have a Justin Jefferson there. So I worry about that a little bit less just because he's done that before. He's never, I mean, until Justin, he had never really had a.
Yeah, but I don't think his days in Washington on a fantasy level were as good as they were in Minnesota, having a guy once Jefferson got there. And obviously that makes a huge difference. So I feel like there's going to be a dip of sorts. Cousins would have been like at the end of my, like, I'm okay having a QB1, having him as a QB1. But now I'm just not sure if I can trust it. I mean, granted, if I get him as a QB2 when he blows up, it's a different story. But
so this is talking about the Falcons being a top 5 unit once again in this upcoming season because they will return everybody. And
so there must have just been a scheme thing then that
they only gave up 18 sacks last year total. So
okay, all right. Well, I mean, a couple more mobile quarterbacks than what Cousins is, though. So
well, and let's be honest. Drake London was never lauded as being a separator.
Right. No, of course not. He finished like 3rd in the NCAA of all time of like not being able to separate. So yeah, I mean,
Kyle Pitts is not a separator. He's a big body. He's not a separator. They didn't have another wide receiver. Remember, we looked at their next closest wide receiver was 16 reception.
Matt Collins, who's the wide receiver 2 in Buffalo now.
16 receptions. So no, I also don't think those guys had the ability to 2-step drop, throw the ball.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. Fair. I mean, not that they have anything better now at this point.
Well, they did add Darnell Mooney. And
which is his speed and stuff, so that could be helpful, yes.
Yeah. Didn't they add somebody else too? No? I feel like they may have signed somebody else. I mean, not like a huge name, but somebody that could make a. No,
I mean,
maybe not.
You still have Bijan, so that's going to help you.
Well, that's going to help anybody for the most part. Yeah.
Well, and it's going to be year 2. I mean, it's a new offense, but still year 2 for him. So that's it's still getting a guy who.
As long as I'm not running a jet sweep to a backup tight end on the 1-yard line, I think we're okay.
They cut him, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Didn't he go to Miami? He signed in Miami, didn't he?
I think he did sign in Miami, yeah.
Yeah, little Jonnu Smith, huh? Oh, boy. Well, basically, Mark, what I'm trying to get at, though, is the Kirk Cousins of what we know with Justin Jefferson, prior to this injury, prior to him being a year older and now having this injury, there's not really a need for Cousins to rely on his feet as much. It's just, I at this stage in the game, you have to start looking at where's the decline coming from? Like, when is it going to come? When's that cliff going to hit? And it may not come for Cousins. I mean, he's been pretty consistent across the board, and he does have some fantasy. Well, I say the fantasy community loves these guys, but the fantasy community loves these guys. So, at least he still has weapons around him, I guess.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know that I ever wanted Kirk as my QB1. So for me, that's why I don't think it changes much for me, because I never was like, yeah, if I have Kirk as my QB1, I'm happy. I'm okay with if I have to have him as my only quarterback for a couple games, sure. But
I don't think that I would be happy
on him.
I don't think I would be happy as him as my 1, but I think I would have been okay with him as my 1.
Yeah. Again, for a few games, something's happened to my other quarterback, whatever. Yeah, I could get by, and I'd be okay. If I'm looking at my team and that's QB1 and I really don't got the guy below there.
Well, I mean, if I would have to have him. I would have my QB2 would have to be somebody that's like close to him to be really okay with it. But I just feel like he's always around the top 12, so I would have been okay with it. Like,
but that's a finishing the season. He's a very inconsistent quarterback. He'll have huge games and terrible games. So that's why it's not a guy I want to sit there. Like I don't want to be okay. I can put Kirk Cousins in my lineup and I don't have to think about it. No, I gotta think about it. I gotta look at. Is he playing on Monday night? Is it Sunday night? Is it Thursday night? I might not play Kirk Cousins.
That's fair. That's very fair. Actually.
So to me, he was never. He finished very high, 6. I mean, top 5, top 6 a lot of times. It's just those come on the backs of 50-point games sometimes with him.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's George Kittle of the quarterback.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. So, yeah, I can understand that argument. I was just saying from a standpoint like that if I had made some trades to try to acquire draft picks because I was a little bit weaker at wide receiver, I would have been okay rolling out Cousins as a 1. I don't think I'd be okay with it. I think I'd rather have him as a 2. For sure, and definitely avoid having him in primetime games for sure, if you could. But I will say I think last year he had a pretty nice primetime game. I think it was a Thursday night game.
I don't know that he actually had a bad game until he just wasn't able to play anymore. I think he was pretty much rolling. Oh, he had. He did. He had 2 games that were bad: a 6-point game and an 8-point game. Other than that, he was 20 and above every other game.
Yeah. So I mean, Cousins is a good little piece in Atlanta. I don't think it really moves anything or changes anything for me as far as I'm concerned. But Baker Mayfield re-signs in Tampa Bay. I love this one. Baker made our list, made both of our lists. 3-year deal, and he gets Mike Evans back. Tampa Bay clearly wants to pretty much try to make another late push like they did this year in the playoffs, and they feel like they're in prime position to be able to do it. So
yeah, I mean they re-signed almost everybody. I think my favorite part of it all, because we did you have to get a new OC, so everybody says, oh, another new OC for Baker. This time not because of a bad thing. Your OC got hired as a head coach. Good for him.
Right.
They consulted with Baker on choosing this guy. Not even once he had a deal. He wasn't even signed to the team, and they were consulting with him about this guy. So that's some real, like, we want you, because
it's an organization.
He was available for somebody else to call and say, hey, we want to sign you.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, yeah, we're not worried we're going to lose you. And they gave him, 3 years, $100 million. It's not like it's this, record-breaking deal, but good for him.
Yeah, I love it for Baker, and I think that it's actually going to reap its benefits too, because he's getting an organization who believes in him, who wants him there. It's the first time in his career that he's had that. It's the first time in his career that he has had input into an offense that he's going to be able to be part of. Re-signing Mike Evans was a huge thing for them as well. For me, it makes Baker even more appealing. I don't think I would move him up my rankings. It just makes him appealing just because maybe next year he can move up, because this is a situation where if he hits, he's still young. Like I say this all the time. I think people forget how old Baker Mayfield really is. I think they believe he's been in the league for 400 years because he's been with so many different teams. That's not the case. Like, that's not the case at all. So, I mean, if he can move, if he can really put together a nice little season next year like he did this past season, and I think he can move up those rankings for sure over the next 2 to 3 years, for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, we all had him down close to 20, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. So you could probably move him up at this point in general. Looking at yours, you have Bryce Young ahead of him. I have to assume you'd swap them at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Knowing
The only reason why I did that before is because I didn't know where Baker was going, and
right.
Bryce was younger. So I mean, that was it for there. But
Fields is obviously going to drop down your list until we find out. So I mean, he's not going to be 14, I assume, for you anymore.
yeah.
And that's really that's about the spot because you have Goff as the next one, and that's another.
Yeah, he's not going to
guy.
pass Goff.
So
yeah,
I'd say you're probably getting them around the 14, 15 area with Fields, Watson, Murray, Bryce Young, those guys. I could see you moving them ahead of all of those guys.
Yep.
At this point, so
I mean, you think about Fields, and we could talk on Fields now because. I mean, I feel like his name is a name that was. I mean, he got traded to Pittsburgh for a 6th round, conditional 6th. Never going to see the 4th unless Russ really bombs out. I'm really surprised by this, Mark. Like, first of all, let's talk about, for me, why the league has this weird ass narrative surrounding Justin Fields. All these reports came out that he was nothing more than a backup, and going back to the conversation that we were just talking about with Baker. I can't blame everything on him for what happened in Chicago.
I blame Chicago for those reports because I think teams were saying that to drive the price down because Chicago pretty much they played their hand. They said, "Oh, we're going to have to get a deal better than last year." Well, Carolina gave you too much last year.
Yeah.
So you were never going to get a better deal than what you got last year because you got too much last year.
And look what happened. The league saw that. Like, no offense to Bryce and Carolina, but look what happened. Like, that's 100% what happened. No team in the league is going to look at that and go, well, let's give them more. No. If Carolina had been successful and Bryce Young had been successful, they probably could have.
Maybe. It was still a lot. It was a ton. A lot.
Yeah, it was a ton.
So I blame Chicago. I really think if that was the best deal they got, they would have been better off to just keep Fields and play him and see if. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh would have gave you a 2nd rounder when Russ shit the bed.
Yeah, well, I mean, but here's the thing though. That deal tells me that the reports that the league viewed him as a backup was true. Because think about this. If Washington, if New England, if Minnesota, if Denver, if Seattle are not in those talks, and Seattle obviously is just on they're a fringe team, are not in those talks about or the Giants, where the Giants obviously are talking about moving up to make a quarterback or drafting a quarterback at 6, are not part of those talks, and they're not giving you something better than a 6th round pick or a conditional 6th round pick, that tells me that the league definitely views him as a backup. And to me, I think that's unfair to Fields. I'm not a guy who believes in Fields as like a QB1. He's going to reach that potential. He's a Super Bowl winning. I'm not that guy. I'm a guy who thinks Fields is a good quarterback that can grow into being a very good quarterback. But like the Baker Mayfield conversation that we had and the conversation we had at the top of the show, what happened in Chicago that made you think that Justin Fields had a fair shake at anything when Matt Nagy, Matt Eberflus, and 4 different offensive coordinators, or whoever that was, in his first 4 years, what makes you think that was his fault and all on him? Because
the thing I'll say about New England and Washington is they're tough because, they could have used them. Maybe they would have liked to. They're also sitting at the point where they could also draft a rookie quarterback and get that contract. So
absolutely. And before you finish that thought, absolutely. But Washington and New England were both 1-2 in free agent cap space and could have made that trade, picked up his 5th-year option, or not picked up his 5th-year option, to put him into an extension. You're going to go out there and prove it this year, and then we can extend you. And use the money to build a team around him and give him a legitimate opportunity and shot. So but on one hand, I understand. Yeah, but
and here's the question. Here's what happens though. We've seen something from Justin Fields. Maybe it's not a fair shake, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We also had question marks about Justin Fields coming out of college, so that's also still has to be there.
Of course. Yeah.
We have rookie quarterbacks that we know not a lot about, so that means we don't know the good, we don't know the bad. So we could get C.J. Stroud, we could get Zach Wilson. We don't know. So do we take the 4-year option, or do we take the maybe 1-year option? And with this option over here, we have to give you maybe a 3rd-round pick. So for those two teams, it's tough. Minnesota. Now, maybe Chicago. But here's the thing, and I get it. Your rivals and division and all that stuff. But if you're telling me that you wouldn't have taken a 2nd or 3rd round pick over a 6th round pick that could possibly be a 4th round pick,
Yeah,
because it's the freaking Vikings, then you deserve to be a terrible organization for the rest of your existence.
Yeah.
Because if you thought he was that good, that sending him to your rival would beat you, then you should keep him.
Right.
So,
And yeah, I understand the argument for Washington, New England. I just feel like that they were both in prime position to get a franchise quarterback who's already been in the league that they can build around. Yeah, you have to pay him, but I mean, it's not going to be an expensive pay for an extension unless he goes out and turns your team around in the first year, right? It's not going to be a super expensive extension. So you're still not giving him that top money NFL quarterback contract anyway. So when you already have all that space,
it's still more than what you're giving a rookie, though. It's so much. The difference is so wide.
Yes,
crazy.
but what is also the shortest path to getting that rebuild accomplished? And to me, a rookie quarterback is a much longer process and a much longer rebuild. And how long do you give them? If Washington with a rookie quarterback or New England with a rookie quarterback, assuming if New England does get a rookie quarterback, because
lately 2 years.
But exactly my point. And what are you doing? You're hard reset anyways, and you're selling them off for a conditional 6th round pick, right?
I don't disagree, but it's that shiny thing in the box.
Of course, I get it.
You could have a boat, but what's in the box could also be a boat. Like
that's a really big box, Mark.
Vegas and Minnesota are the two that I look at and go, why? Why
Vegas,
wouldn't
that's right. I
you
didn't think about Vegas? Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Those are the two. Yeah, Seattle's a fringe one, but again, they're like, I feel like in a weird spot. But Vegas, you're keeping Devontae Adams, so you're gonna and no knock to Gardner Minshew, which we could talk about next if you would like.
Yeah.
But you can't sit here and tell me you think Gardner Minshew makes your team that much better than trying Justin Fields out.
Yeah, and in Vegas, I didn't even think about, but yeah, I mean that's another good one as far as it's concerned. I mean, you signed him to a 1 year 25 million. What was it? 1 year 25 million or 2 year 20? No, 1 million. 1 year 25 million, right?
Minshew?
Yeah, it was 1 year 25 mil. 2 years 25 mil. Yeah. So I mean, that I don't know, man. It's a very weird dynamic to me with Justin. I don't know. It's just strange. It's just like I get that this quarterback class, they're talking about 4 quarterbacks in the top 6, possibly top 5, and I understand that there's a lot of like looking at it in shiny parts, and I know that next year's draft class isn't viewed in the same light, but how often do we see 4 quarterbacks go in the first round and all 4 hit?
I have to assume it's 0.
Yeah,
I have to assume it's 0.
How many times do we see 3 quarterbacks go in the first and all 3 hit?
And that's probably almost close to 0 on top of.
I would say 2 quarterbacks in the first round may have hit a couple times.
I mean that's because that's easier. You could look at Lamar Jackson and did he go with Burrow? Were Burrow and Jackson the same?
I think Jackson was a year before Burrow, I believe. I think.
So he was with Baker and them. So him and Josh Allen. So there's your 2. And that's literally because Baltimore traded back in to take Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, you could say Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers if you want. I mean, you could go back further, but
Big Ben was in that. So
Big
I mean,
Ben too. So
but he
you
wasn't
could say
top 10, I
3.
don't think.
You could say maybe 3 in that one. 3 in the first round there, pretty much hit.
Yeah,
You could say that
yeah.
one. That might be the only time in the history of drafts that's happened. So that's my thing. Is like the NFL. I don't know, man. It just feels. It's just like it goes back to that Bucky Brooks tweet. It's just a very weird dynamic in the NFL, and when it translates to the fantasy purposes of things, it just doesn't do any good. So Justin Fields would drop completely out of my list, by the way, for this year. Long term, I don't even know where I would have him, but I'd probably still have him a little bit higher, just primarily because I think he might get a chance in Pittsburgh. But I don't know, man. So
here's my thing. I don't understand why one organization has over the last 30 years had 3 quarterbacks now. They're now on to their 3rd. And 2 of them didn't start for at least, I don't know. Rodgers sat for a few years. I don't know how. I think it was 3 years. Maybe it was 4 like Jordan Love. Was it 4? So for 4 years. Now, I'm not saying you have to sit your guy for 4 years. But what about throwing these guys out there has proven better than to let them sit? Even Patrick Mahomes sat for a season because they said, he's not fully ready yet. Let's develop this guy. Let's let him learn our system or help him. Let's maybe build a system around him. Or maybe we take 2 things. We help him learn it. We build something around him. We do this together. Let's give Alex Smith the year. So let's give Justin Fields the year. Let's give Jimmy Garoppolo the year. Don't get the rush. Why?
Well,
you're a terrible team to begin with. What do you think throwing your rookie out there is going to do for you?
But here's the thing with that, though, and the reason why the 2 situations you mentioned with Patrick Mahomes and Trey Lance, because you were talking about Mahomes and Lance with Garoppolo and Smith. The reason why that those worked okay was because the teams were playoff contenders that year that Smith and Garoppolo started. If you had Justin Fields, you drafted Caleb Williams first overall, and you start the year 1-5, what do you think is going to happen within that organization?
But that's fine. You at least gave time. What are you losing out on? The 6th round pick you're going to get from Pittsburgh anyway?
Well, right, but I understand that. But then you throw Caleb out there anyways. Their thought process is why not just speed that up.
Don't. But if you're that bad already, then why throw them out there? Just let it play out and finish the season terrible. You're going to be terrible either way. What's the difference?
Because for the most part in the NFL, winning is everything, and if you're not winning that, it's what have you done for me lately? And
no, you know what it is it gets to this point where this coach now feels like I gotta find the guy, I gotta win now because I'm gonna get fired. I know Mike Tomlin gets a lot of flack, but to not have a losing season, sure, being 8-8 and 9-8 and whatever it's been now recently isn't the greatest thing, and not a ton of playoff wins recently, but you're still not a terrible franchise. You are still not losing 13, 14 games. I really feel like NFL fans and NFL owners think they're all going to win the Super Bowl every year. Well, guess what? One team does. There's 32 total, and only one is going to win. It's only the way it's going to happen. And when you look at the list of teams who won it all time, I'm pretty sure almost half the league has still never won a Super Bowl. As some of those franchises do something differently.
Yeah.
Try a new way.
I don't disagree with you. And you think about Chicago, too, as a whole. Like, Chicago is, never had a 4,000-yard passer in their history. So, that's...
I also don't think, Chicago realizes that their city is cold and windy. maybe having a mobile quarterback, you could build a more running offensive round so that when you're playing in the high winds of Chicago, you can win games other ways than trying to throw the ball for 4,000 yards. Maybe develop something like that. But no, let's just we'll go out and get a gunslinger and.
But I think that's pretty much what
be
they've
our
been
quarterback
trying
again.
to do. So maybe the gunslinger is the change for them.
They had one. Jay Cutler was the gunslinger. The dude just threw it up and hoped. The only thing that made Jay Cutler good was they had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, who were 7 foot tall each, and you could just toss the damn ball up to them, and they came down with it most of the time.
Oh boy! All right.
And he couldn't even throw for 4,000 yards.
Is there any other fantasy relevant quarterbacks in there for you? I don't think so. I mean, Gardner Minshew maybe for the Raiders for 1 year, but fantasy dynasty wise, I really don't care. I mean, he's going to be on rosters and plug and play, but
it'll come down to Sam Darnold possibly being the starter this year. So that's at least an interesting signing because if he's the starter.
But is it in the long term? Is that long term though? Is that I mean,
you never know. But at least it's at least somebody to think about. If you're in a startup and you're getting near the later rounds, and maybe you're still looking for your third quarterback, it's not a terrible dart throw at that point when maybe your options are Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston and those guys. Like give Darnold a shot. He's at least looking like the starter. I mean. This is why I'm a person who waits to draft till the NFL draft happens.
For sure. No doubt about it. All right. That's it for the quarterbacks. I don't think there's anything else there. I don't have any interest in adding anybody to my list, including Darnold. So we don't spend a lot of time talking about it.
Darnold gets through the draft and they don't take a high-profile guy. I'm not saying they're going to draft some kind of quarterback. We all know this. Who they draft and when they draft them makes a difference. So
they have two firsts. They have two firsts, so there is a chance that a move can be made. I'm looking at the Chargers. I'm looking at the Chargers at 5, but I'm just saying a move can be made.
Through that, he's at least a starter with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones. It's an offense that is at least got weapons.
Yep.
So I'll take him over.
Sounds so weird you saying Aaron Jones in Minnesota.
Yeah, well, it is.
Sounds odd. Just sounds odd. All right. Jumping over to the wide receivers. The first wide receiver that was signed, weirdly, we'll say Mike Evans, because Mike Evans was re-signed before the free agency officially hit. Mike Evans in Tampa Bay. We touched base a little bit during the Baker Mayfield. But the first wide receiver that was signed in free agency was Gabe Davis in Jacksonville.
Yeah,
he was the first one. He was the first wide receiver off the board.
I mean, to be fair, when you look at this list and understand that Pittman was tagged, so he wasn't even an option to be signed. He re-signed.
He re-signed
a bigger deal, but was tagged. T. Higgins was tagged. Mike Evans was signed. After that, the list is Calvin Ridley, Odell, Marquise Brown, Mike Williams, and actually no, not Mike Williams. He was not available at that moment.
No.
Darnell Mooney, Tyler Boyd, Curtis Samuel. Like I might Gabe Davis, where he's at on the list of actual free agents, isn't that far down because the list isn't that good.
But the money that was given to him,
3 years, $39 million. That's not. $13 million a year.
I think his contract was higher than that. I think that's guaranteed.
3 years, $39 million deal.
No, it was something more than that. Had to have been. That's guaranteed money. It's got to be guaranteed.
I don't think so.
I'm trying to find it. It's taking me a minute, guys. I apologize. I had it up earlier, but it disappeared. Anyways, I saw a thing with Gabe Davis' stat, and I think that he's had, I don't even know, 2 career games of over 150 yards receiving.
He had an amazing
one playoff game.
Maybe two.
I retweet too much stuff. Could have sworn his contract was bigger. I could be wrong.
No, I'm pretty sure 3 years, $39 million is the total.
I don't remember. I can't find it. Anyways.
Yeah. 3 years, $39 million.
That was the
what he got in guaranteed, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, I guess it was. Oh, it's worth up to $50 million.
Oh, but that's all that incentive crap.
I understand that, but like, what has Gabe Davis done for you to, at a 3-year, $50 million contract, regardless if it's incentives or not?
Yeah, but
I mean, what has he done?
What did Christian Kirk do before you gave him the $20 million a year deal and everybody burned it alive, and then every wide receiver after him signed these huge deals, and then Christian Kirk outplayed them all?
I mean, at least for Kirk, he showed flashes. I mean, Gabe's had one good playoff game and then 2 career games of over 150 yards or some shit. Like,
yeah, but I mean 150 yards is that's a lot for a wide receiver, especially in a team that.
Speaking of wide receivers, by the way, the New York Giants have reached an agreement to bring back Isaiah Hodgins.
Yippee!
What? I'm just saying. I
mean, so this past season, Gabe had 5 games over 80 yards total. I think when you look at other signings, it's not like it's that. I mean, the Titans gave Calvin Ridley 4 years and $92 million.
Yeah, and that was another one that I was a little.
I mean, Darnell Mooney signed almost the same deal, 3 years, $39 million. So, I don't see that as being. And there's probably something in there where if he's terrible, they'll cut him. Gabe really matters whether his head's going to be on straight, because I feel like at the end of that run with Buffalo, he wasn't. He knew they didn't want him there, and he didn't want to be there anymore. I think he really was reading the writing wall.
I don't know. I'm not really a huge fan of the signing, to be honest with you, but I mean, I guess I can kind of understand it.
He's.
I don't think he adds anything. I don't think he moves on my list anywhere. I don't think he's a guy that.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think this changes anything. It's just.
I think he adds NFL for them because he's a speedster. I think he's probably faster than Calvin Ridley is. And let's not be honest, Calvin Ridley was not that great for them last year. He had some good games, but overall, Calvin was a bit of a disappointment, I feel like, last year for what he once was for Calvin Ridley. So
I think a lot of that, though, was also still a I think Jacksonville's offense as a whole really struggled coming after the gate, and I think a lot of that was injuries and various other things. And I mean, I don't know. Calvin Ridley, you mentioned him. Signed with Tennessee, had a huge contract. What what does this do for you as far as fantasy is concerned? Is he a guy that you're gonna, turn around and want to go get at all, or no? Don't like it?
No, they still have DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
Treylon Burks is there. Now you bring Calvin Ridley in for this huge deal, possibly saying that, okay, maybe we'll have Hopkins this year, and that's probably it. I'm sure it's all he signed for anyway. So you have 2 older wide receivers and a quarterback with question marks, who could be good and could be terrible. We really don't know. So
Brian Callahan helps that at all, or that scheme might help it at all? Or?
Maybe. I've never been a Calvin. I've never went. I got to have Calvin Ridley. Even when Calvin Ridley was good with Atlanta, he was good with Atlanta because they just got rid of Julio Jones, and he was the only guy Matt Ryan could throw to.
That's fair.
Like, sure, he's probably, well, I don't know if he still is, but at one time was a good route runner. But nothing else really jumped off the page for me. So Calvin Ridley's never been a guy I'm like, yeah, that's the guy I got to have.
So is there anybody on this wide receiver list that got moved or even traded that intrigues you at all? I mean, Jerry Jeudy to Cleveland's probably the only one that kind of intrigues me, but still having Amari Cooper there and, Cedric Tillman, who probably will move up the depth chart, being there. I mean, is there any Elijah Moore being there?
You traded for him and then signed him to a deal. Tells me he's clearly your guy, but that's not much different than this Tennessee offense, where I don't really know what we're going to get from multiple wide receivers out of that offense. Sure, if Deshaun Watson can return to Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, then that could be exciting. But what we saw from Deshaun Watson last year leads me to not want really anything from that offense at this point. So it's a good signing, or it's a good thing just because clearly in Denver something wasn't working. But Judy's another guy that I was not high on when he came out. People had him as their wide receiver 1. I don't even think I had him as my wide receiver 2. Maybe he was my 3.
Weren't a big fan of him.
No, because he's another one of those Bama wide receivers. Was he good because of who played around him, or was he actually good?
Right.
He's another guy that, okay, he ran good routes, sure, but like at Alabama, when you have all that talent, sometimes you're not held to be the idea that it's Saban, so he's tough on his guys, so they're going to be tough. It doesn't seem that way very often.
No,
because when you're really good, I think he just let you be you and didn't bother with you. Because Trent Richardson didn't want to do work. Jerry Jeudy doesn't seem like he wants to do work. Calvin Ridley,
There was a lot of reports coming out of Denver that, Jerry Jeudy had some major attitude issues and problems, and definitely caused, I don't know, more locker room issues and attitude problems than anything else. So if Cleveland can rein that in, or if he can rein that in being in Cleveland, I like it for his ability to be dynamic if he gets the opportunity, but he also needs to stay healthy too. Yep. That's a huge problem for Jerry Jeudy as well.
It made me happy for one league because I own Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, and neither one of them were all that great.
Is that one of our co-owned leagues?
Not anymore. You left me.
Yeah, because I took over a really bad team, right?
No, I think the team was not terrible, but it's only a 10-team league, so like every team.
Oh, yeah.
But that's literally the only thing that makes me happy about it is just they're separated. So if Jerry is good enough, maybe I could trade him. If Cortland plays well enough, maybe I could trade him fine. Like they can't move either one of them because nobody wants either one because they're eating into each other. Yeah. And also, let me just say, the other day when that stuff was coming out about Cam Sutton, the cornerback for the Bills, all I saw was Sutton at first.
And you thought it was Cortland?
I did. I was
he got cut today. He got released, so he's a gunner.
Good for him.
Michael Pittman re-signed with Indianapolis. I love it. I think Michael Pittman's a 1. Personally.
As long as Anthony Richardson continues to develop, it'll be fine because you keep Pittman around. He's in the system he knows. He's in the team he knows. It's so as long as Anthony can continue to get better. All of the people around Anthony last year talked about he's the best quarterback. He's the best quarterback. And sure, he was raw. I don't disagree with that. He needs time. So again, if it's a team that's willing to work on his weaknesses, build off his strengths, do what they got to do, we'll be good.
You mentioned before we came on, there was one possibly sneaky spot start signing up in Buffalo that you were looking at?
Curtis Samuel.
I like it just because they don't have anybody else behind Stephon Diggs. I mean,
they may not have Stephon Diggs
at this point, yeah.
I'm sure they will because I don't think they can get out, but you never know.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers has a new target. Mike Williams signed with the Jets.
Oh yes, Mike.
A 1 year, $15 million. Another guy who can't stay healthy.
I mean, well, we can go back to Keenan Allen then, getting traded to the Bears.
Oh yeah, Keenan Allen got traded to the Bears. Chicago, 4th round pick.
I forgot the Chargers decided they didn't want to have wide receivers anymore.
Well, it was.
I mean, they're only going to run the ball. So no, they're going to run the ball. So what do you need wide receivers for?
Exactly.
You go draft wide receivers who can block. You don't need wide receivers who catch the ball. They didn't do it at Michigan, so what are they going to do it in LA for?
This is true. I think the Chargers are going to probably draft a running back at 5, a running back at 205, a running back at 305, and a running back at 405.
No. Blake Corum at 5. You don't need another running back. You got your guy. You go find wide receivers who can block. That's what they're going to do.
Sounding like Dennis Leary from draft day. I need a running back. Let's draft a running back at 7. So they drafted Arian Foster. That's the only time Arian Foster's ever been drafted in his life.
Outside of fantasy football.
Well, I mean, that doesn't count, though. It's fantasy.
Hey, shout out to Arian Foster for being an undrafted guy who
sure.
Had some really good seasons.
All right, I'm going to get into a hard-hitting question. All right. Right now, who is your Devy quarterback 1?
Devy quarterback 1?
Yeah.
Oh.
For all the listeners out there, for anybody that's still with us, I just wanted to go ahead and just throw him off guard and see if I could catch him on something.
I have to say Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers still number 1. Okay, all right.
He's the only one who showed actual promise last year. Drew Aller was terrible.
Penn State was terrible
against good teams. Yeah, but even against bad teams, Drew, I'm not saying it's all Drew's fault. That offense was a very unimaginative offense.
Yeah,
and I get we have 2 great running backs at Penn State, both of them really good, but you can't constantly run, throw, run. Ooh, we're gonna throw. You were so predictable of an offense that you wasted a really good defense. That's the sad part. I'm going Quinn Ewers. That's who I'm taking.
Quinn Ewers. Okay, all right. I am going to probably. I think I'm going to agree with you. I think I'm going to go with Ewers. I do really like Dante Moore, though. I do like Dante Moore.
Yeah.
Don't know what to expect from him, but I do like Dante Moore. So
yeah, I can't put a quarterback who hasn't thrown a pass at 1 yet.
No, and that's primarily one of the main reasons why I haven't put him there. So yeah, I mean, how about Devy running back 1?
Oh.
Does it even count? Does it even matter? Running back is basically an obsolete, useless position now.
Yeah, I get that, but I can't say Judkins or Henderson anymore because until I see the 2 of them play together.
What about CJ Baxter?
Well, I mean, they're both really good, but what
about CJ Baxter?
See, I'm between Singleton and Baxter.
I like Singleton too.
I'm just like, Singleton's gonna I think 100% come out next year. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. But Baxter was really good for Texas last year.
He really was. This one's a little bit harder. Wide receiver. I know. I'm hitting you with all the hard ones. I feel like wide receivers. I feel like wide receivers
I'm
much
sticking
harder.
to Luther Burden. I'm sticking with him.
Man, I love Luther Burden.
The way they used him last year, and that was a very good Missouri team out of nowhere, and big part of that was Luther Burden. Yes, the quarterback play was much better than it had been, but the fact that they were using him to hand the ball off, get him the ball in space, throw that tells me you are a complete wide receiver when the team is willing to use you in many different ways. Don't ask me about tight end though.
Oh, I don't.
I don't know a single one of them.
Why would you even ask me to ask?
Because at one time you could have just said Brock Bowers and it was an easy answer. I don't know a tight end in college who's good now. I only know Brock Bowers because he was so good from the beginning. I don't know one.
So how close is the drop off between Burden to Evan Stewart for you?
It's not like huge, but Evan's obviously going to a new school, so
yeah,
a new school with a new quarterback.
Yeah. I was just curious.
I'd be Branch. Branch is probably closer to Stewart.
Branch's size just worries me.
Yeah, sure, but
his size just worries me a little bit. Any viewers or listeners out there, by the way, if you guys do want to dive into a realm of Devy or possibly Campus to Canton, I should be having a Campus to Canton league opening up fairly soon. Just hit me up on social media, and we can make it happen if you want. I run mine a little bit differently than most people, but mine's a lot of fun. So, Mark, are you prepared for a new one yet? I mean, it's not going to be right this second, but I mean, prepared for a new one here in the near future?
I mean, I don't. When we draft the Canton side, I don't go in with this huge list of players because it's college football. There's so many, and you have to it honestly really depends on how you built your NFL team. Because if you go a little older, you might need to go a little older on the college side to start filling quicker. If you go a little younger, you can go a little younger on the college side, but you still got to pepper in some points.
And then you're going to be sitting there waiting forever, like all 4 of my C2C leagues.
The biggest,
I don't know why I do that to myself.
Change I think I would make is trying to find more sophomore and juniors who are probably not going to come out as juniors next year that are scoring points in some type of way.
Yeah. Because it seems you get another 2 years out of them, possibly 3 if they have a red shirt. So
right, and just because they're probably guys you're never going to see in the NFL, but they're getting you points in the college side, and that in itself could be so valuable to your team.
And you have to wait on these guys too. If you do that, you have to wait on them. Because I drafted Penny Boone and then dropped him, and he had a sensational year for Toledo last year. So.
Well, that's what I mean. Trying to find those ones who are looking okay, maybe they're going to be the starter. Trying to find that. Trying to maybe even look in the FCS, and instead of finding the seniors who have had 4 great years and are going to have only 1, because that sophomore or junior that definitely is not going to come out next year,
right?
But is looking really good. So that's I always like to try and find FCS guys that are just gonna just put the points up.
Of course you do. I don't have anything else, Mark. Do you have anything? Is there anything? Anybody else you wanted to talk about on that dreadful list after the top 4 wide receivers? Does Mike Williams going to the Jets help you at all? Do you think that matters? No? Don't care?
I mean, if you have him on your team, it's at least a good signing because who else is there?
Right. After Garrett Wilson, there's really nobody.
Right. So there's not even a tight end you could look at. So it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mike Williams. Alan Lazard is
useless.
Freaking whatchamacallit loves him. But no. After Curtis Samuel being like a bit of a sleeper, mainly because there's nothing really else there at the Bills right now, the list gets pretty bad pretty quick.
Does the Gabe Davis signing in Jacksonville hurt your Parker Washington love?
No, because I still think Parker will either be the 2 or 3. You're talking about a guy who was a rookie last year that didn't see a lot of time because of people ahead of him. So, I mean, unless Gabe turns himself around, Parker's going to outplay him.
Gabe is probably going to play the X. Parker will probably play inside anyway. So,
well, that's where Kirk plays a lot of. Kirk's more of a slot guy.
But they also have Zay Jones. So
yeah, but again, that's a vet who played well for you 2 years ago. Terrible season last year, though. A lot of injuries, but then just even when he played, didn't play well. So possibly a guy that doesn't make the team if Parker takes a step forward. I don't think Parker's that small. I mean, he's probably 5'10", because I think everybody who got drafted last year was 5'10".
He's 5'10".
I don't think there was a wide receiver that broke 6 feet. Maybe Ray Rice or Rasheed Rice.
I don't really remember Parker playing outside a lot at Penn State, though. I remember him playing a lot inside, but I don't remember him playing a lot outside.
That offense ran through Jahan Dotson, so it didn't really matter where you started from. The ball was mostly going to Dotson, and that was almost about it at a time. That, again, very unimaginative offense. That has been the big Achilles heel for Penn State.
Yeah, I could see it. All right, well, what do we have on tap for next week? It's getting around draft season. Are we going to dive into rookies next week, or is that what we're going to do? I know we wanted to wait for Eli, but he should be back hopefully with us here soon. But
maybe, I mean, we could look at that. We could talk about we haven't done any looking at trades that have going to the Twitter experts, finding some trades that people be posting.
I like that. I like that idea. I've seen a lot of them. So if you have any Twitter trades that you guys have seen out there in the fantasy world that or Twitter polls or whatever else that you want to
trades in your leagues,
trades in your leagues even, post them in the comments. Get a hold of us. Let us know. We will share them on the show next week and then talk about them. We'll talk about them obviously from a dynasty standpoint. I mean, by all means, well, I don't think any redrafts have really started yet, so it'll probably make good sense too.
If you draft and redraft right now, you've got more problems than we have, and we're pretty degenerate with this stuff.
We are pretty degenerate with it. This is very true. So if you have any trades you want us to talk about, or if you actually, you know what, I'll even go even further. If you have any roster submissions that you want to go ahead and send to us, you can hit me up on social media. My social media is MW77. 77 is spelt out. That's on Twitter or X. Hit me up on Facebook at Michael Washington as well. You can hit up the Dynasty Academy. It's Dynasty Academy. The E in Academy is a 3. That's on Twitter and X as well. You can hit us up over there as well, and we can post it and talk about it. So anything you have that's fantasy related that you want us to discuss and talk about, just give us a little bit of the specs. Is it a PPR? Is it a tight end premium, et cetera, et cetera? Please let us know about it, and we'll talk about it and give you a grade or whatever.
How many teams total?
Yep.
Superflex, tight end premium, whether it is or isn't.
Yep.
And whether it's PPR or half PPR. If it's a standard, don't bring it up. Good. Go back to your league, leave it, and then find somewhere else to go.
And if you do want to ask us any questions about any college prospects that you love or don't love, or have any questions or want our analysis on it, go ahead and hit us up with that as well. Dynasty Academy here on Shady Sports Network. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the little dingy thingamajiggy, and make sure you get the notifications. We're here Thursdays, 8:15 p.m. every Thursday. We're going to shift 15 minutes just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to get here on time, primarily me. Dynasty Academy for this week. That's going to do it. I'm Michael Washington. He's Mark Ongst. Thank you again, Shady Sports Network, for giving us the platform. Class is dismissed.